My name is Victoria Hayes. I'm 32 years old, and I thought I knew what family meant until the day I discovered everyone was invited to my cousin's wedding except me. I was sitting in my apartment in downtown Seattle, scrolling through Instagram on a lazy Saturday morning, when I saw it. Photo after photo of my cousin Melissa's engagement party, the one I apparently didn't exist for. There was my mom, radiant in her navy dress. My dad, looking proud as he raised a toast. My brother Jake with his wife Sarah, both beaming at the camera. Even distant relatives I hadn't seen in years were there, clinking glasses and celebrating. But not me. Never me. My phone buzzed with a text from my Aunt Linda, Melissa's mother. Saw you liked the photos. Hope you're not upset about not being included. You know how small we had to keep things. Don't make this about you, honey. Don't make this about me. I stared at the message, my coffee growing cold in my hands. The engagement party had clearly hosted 50 people, yet somehow there wasn't room for the cousin who had spent every childhood summer at their lake house, who had helped Melissa through her college breakups, who had been there for every birthday, every celebration, every family milestone. I just smiled. That's what I always did. I typed back, of course. So happy for her. Can't wait for the wedding. But as I hit send, something inside me broke. Because I knew, with a sinking certainty, that if I wasn't invited to the engagement party, I wouldn't be invited to the wedding either. Want to know what happened next? Stay tuned because this story gets much more shocking than you might expect. 3 weeks later, my suspicions were confirmed when the wedding invitations started arriving. My parents got one. Jake got one. Every aunt, uncle, and cousin in our extended family got one. The mailman probably got one. But Victoria Hayes? She might as well have been a ghost. I called my mom, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, did you get Melissa's wedding invitation? Oh yes, sweetie. It's going to be beautiful. The venue is that gorgeous country club overlooking the Sound. She's having 200 guests. 200 guests, but not me. That's wonderful, I managed. I'm sure she just ran out of room. My mom went quiet for a moment. Victoria, honey, didn't you get yours? Maybe it got lost in the mail? I could have lied. I could have pretended everything was fine, like I always did. Instead, I found myself saying, "No, Mom. I didn't get one because I wasn't invited." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, she whispered, "That can't be right. There must be some mistake." But I knew there was no mistake. This was deliberate. This was calculated. And as I hung up the phone, I realized that my family's betrayal ran deeper than just one wedding invitation. Growing up, I had always been the odd one out in the Hayes family dynasty. My parents were successful real estate developers who had built their empire from nothing. My brother Jake followed perfectly in their footsteps, joining the family business straight out of college. But me? I was the dreamer who chose art school over business school, who became a freelance photographer instead of a corporate executive. Victoria's always been different, I'd heard Aunt Linda say once at a family barbecue when she thought I couldn't hear. Not quite as driven as the rest of them. Different. That word had followed me my entire life. Different because I chose creativity over conformity. Different because I lived in a modest apartment instead of a mansion. Different because I measured success by passion rather than profit. But I had never imagined that being different meant being disposable. As I sat in my living room that evening, surrounded by photographs I'd taken of family gatherings over the years, photos that captured moments of joy I was apparently never truly part of, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to beg for an invitation. I wasn't going to confront Melissa or plead my case to Aunt Linda. Instead, I was going to do something that would shake our family to its core. I was going to plan my own celebration. And it was going to be unforgettable. But first, I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. Because as I started digging into the family dynamics I'd been blind to for years, I discovered that this wedding snub was just the tip of a very ugly iceberg. The memories came flooding back like a dam bursting, years of subtle slights, backhanded compliments, and moments where I felt like I was watching my own family from the outside looking in. I had always idolized Melissa. She was 3 years younger than me, but she had been the golden child from the moment she could walk. While I spent my childhood with paint under my fingernails and camera straps around my neck, Melissa was the one who naturally gravitated toward the family business conversations at dinner parties. She was the one who remembered to send thank you cards and birthday gifts right on time. She was everything I wasn't: organized, ambitious in the traditional sense, and most importantly, she never questioned the family hierarchy. Melissa just gets it, my dad used to say, beaming with pride whenever she joined him and Uncle Robert for their weekend golf games. She understands what it means to be a Hayes. I thought I understood too, but apparently, I was wrong. The week after I discovered I wasn't invited, I decided to visit my childhood home in Bellevue. My parents were hosting their monthly family dinner, and for once, I wanted to observe rather than participate. I wanted to see our family dynamics with new eyes. The evening started typically enough. Mom had made her famous lasagna, and the dining room buzzed with the usual conversations about real estate markets and investment opportunities. Jake dominated the conversation with stories about his latest property acquisition, while his wife Sarah nodded admiringly. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda sat across from them, occasionally chiming in with their own business victories. And then someone mentioned the wedding. Melissa's been working so hard on the final details, Aunt Linda gushed, cutting her lasagna into perfect small bites. The florist alone is costing more than most people's cars, but Robert insisted we spare no expense for our little princess. She deserves it, my mom agreed. All those years of hard work are finally paying off. Did you know she just got promoted to senior associate at the firm? I pushed my food around my plate, feeling increasingly invisible. Nobody acknowledged that I wasn't part of these wedding discussions. Nobody asked if I'd received my invitation. It was as if my absence from the celebration was so natural, so expected, that it didn't even warrant explanation. The guest list was the hardest part, Aunt Linda continued, and I felt every muscle in my body tense. We had to make some difficult choices. Family first, of course, then college friends, work colleagues. It's amazing how quickly 200 seats fill up. That's when Jake, bless him, finally spoke up. What about Victoria? She's family. The table went quiet. I looked up from my untouched plate to see Aunt Linda exchange a meaningful look with my parents. It was a look I'd seen before but never really understood, a look that spoke of conversations held behind closed doors, decisions made without my knowledge. Well, Aunt Linda said carefully, Victoria's been so busy with her photography work lately. We didn't want to impose, especially since she's not really involved in Melissa's day-to-day life anymore. Not involved? I had photographed Melissa's college graduation. I had been there for her first heartbreak. I had helped her move into 3 different apartments. But apparently, none of that mattered because I wasn't part of the family business network. Besides, Uncle Robert added, his tone suggesting the topic was closed, it's not like Victoria would really fit in with Melissa's crowd anyway. Different lifestyles, you know? Different lifestyles. There was that word again, different. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror in the hallway, staring at my reflection. The same green eyes as my father, the same stubborn chin as my mother. I looked like a haze, but apparently, I didn't act like one. As I walked back toward the dining room, I heard my mom's voice, lower now but still audible. I just think it would have been nice to include her. She is my niece. Sarah, Aunt Linda's voice was patient but firm, you know how Victoria gets. She'd probably just complain about something, the music, the venue, the dress code. This is Melissa's perfect day. We can't risk having any complications. Complications. That's what I was to them, not family, not beloved niece or cousin. I was a complication to be managed, a problem to be solved by simply erasing me from the equation. I didn't return to the dinner table. Instead, I grabbed my purse and coat and slipped out the front door, leaving behind a family that had clearly left me long ago. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times I'd felt like I was performing for my family's approval, all the times I'd tried to fit into their mold despite knowing it wasn't right for me. I thought about Melissa's sweet 16 party, where I'd been relegated to photographer duty instead of being celebrated as the guest I should have been. I thought about graduation parties and holiday gatherings where I'd always felt like I was watching from the periphery. But mostly, I thought about the conversation I'd overheard, and how casually they'd dismissed me. How easily they'd written me off as someone who didn't matter, someone whose feelings weren't worth considering. That's when I made my second decision. I wasn't just going to plan my own celebration, I was going to plan something so spectacular, so undeniably beautiful, that they would never be able to ignore me again. I was going to show them exactly what they'd chosen to exclude from their perfect family portrait. And when I was done, they would understand that different didn't mean less than, it meant irreplaceable. But first, I had to figure out how to pull off the impossible on a freelance photographer's budget. Little did I know, the universe was about to hand me exactly the opportunity one needed. The idea came to me at 3 a.m., the way the best ideas always do, sudden, crazy, and absolutely perfect. I was lying in bed, scrolling through wedding venues online with a mixture of curiosity and masochism, when I stumbled across an article about a couple who had live-streamed their elopement during COVID. The video had gone viral, not because it was expensive or elaborate, but because it was authentic, intimate, and beautifully captured. That's when it hit me. I didn't need to compete with Melissa's country club extravaganza. I needed to do something completely different. Something that would showcase who I really was, not who my family wanted me to be. I spent the next 3 days crafting what I privately called the Celebration Project. Since I was a photographer, I understood better than anyone how powerful visual storytelling could be. I would plan a small, intimate ceremony by the ocean, not a wedding, but a celebration of self-love and chosen family. I would invite the people who truly mattered, my closest friends, my mentor from art school, the vendors I'd worked with over the years who had become like family. But here's where my plan got deliciously vindictive. I would document everything professionally and share it on social media during Melissa's wedding weekend. Not out of spite, at least, that's what I told myself, but to show the world that celebration doesn't require exclusion, that love doesn't have to come with conditions. The first person I called was my best friend Marcus, who had been my anchor through every family disappointment for the past 15 years. "Let me get this straight," he said after I'd explained my plan. "You want to throw yourself a celebration on the same weekend as your cousin's wedding, live stream the whole thing, and potentially go viral just to prove a point to your family? When you put it like that, it sounds petty." "Victoria, honey, it is petty. It's also brilliant. Marcus was a social media strategist for a tech company in Portland, and he understood the power of authentic storytelling better than anyone. Within an hour, he'd helped me outline a content strategy that would be impossible to ignore. The next call was to Elena Rodriguez, a wedding officiant I'd worked with on dozens of shoots. Elena specialized in non-traditional ceremonies, and when I explained what I wanted to do, she was immediately on board. "I love this idea," she said. "A celebration of self-worth and chosen family? It's exactly what the world needs to see. And honestly, Victoria, I've seen how you support everyone else at these weddings. It's time someone celebrated you." The location came together like magic. I had photographed a small beachfront restaurant in Edmonds the previous summer, and when I called the owner to explain my vision, she offered to close the restaurant for a private event in exchange for professional photos of the space. The timing was perfect. Melissa's wedding was on a Saturday in June, and I could book the restaurant for the Friday evening before. As the pieces fell into place, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: pure excitement. For the first time in my adult life, I was planning something that was completely, authentically mine. But the universe wasn't done with its surprises. 3 weeks before my celebration, I received an unexpected email from David Chin, a talent scout for a major lifestyle brand. He'd been following my work on Instagram and wanted to discuss a potential collaboration. When we met for coffee, he explained that his company was looking for authentic stories about self-empowerment and redefining family traditions. "Your aesthetic is exactly what we're looking for," he said, sliding a contract across the table. "We'd like to sponsor your event and document it for our summer campaign about celebrating individuality." The sponsorship wasn't huge, enough to cover my venue costs and provide professional videography, but it represented something more important than money. It was validation from complete strangers who saw value in what my own family had dismissed. That evening, I called my parents to let them know about my plans. I wasn't asking for permission or seeking their approval, I was simply informing them as a courtesy. "You're doing what?" my mom asked, her voice tight with confusion. "I'm hosting a celebration of friendship and chosen family," I repeated calmly. "It's on Friday night, the day before Melissa's wedding. I wanted to let you know in case you saw it on social media." The silence stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "Victoria, this seems excessive. Why would you do this right before Melissa's wedding?" "Because I want to celebrate the people who actually want me in their lives," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "And because I realized that waiting for other people to celebrate me was a waste of my time." "This is about the wedding invitation, isn't it?" my mom asked softly. "This is about a lot of things, Mom. But mainly, it's about choosing joy over resentment." After I hung up, I sat in my living room surrounded by planning notebooks, vendor contracts, and inspiration boards. For the first time in years, I felt like I was moving towards something instead of running away from disappointment. But I should have known my family wouldn't let this go quietly. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and a text from Jake: "Call me now. Family emergency." When I called him back, his voice was strained. "Victoria, what the hell is going on? Aunt Linda is having a complete meltdown. She's saying you're trying to upstage Melissa's wedding. I'm having a small dinner with friends." "How is that upstaging anyone?" "She saw the Instagram posts about the sponsorship. She knows it's going to be photographed and shared online. She's convinced you're doing this to embarrass the family." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "What did she say exactly?" Jake sighed. She called Mom crying, saying that you've always been jealous of Melissa and that this proves you can't handle not being the center of attention. She wants Mom and Dad to talk you out of it. And what do Mom and Dad think? Another pause. They're worried about family harmony. They think maybe you could postpone your celebration until after Melissa gets back from her honeymoon. Family harmony. The phrase that had governed my entire childhood, the excuse used to silence my needs whenever they conflicted with someone else's comfort. Jake, I said quietly, what if I told you that I've spent my entire life postponing my happiness for the sake of family harmony? What if I told you I was tired of being the one who always had to be reasonable, flexible, and understanding? I'd probably say it's about time you put yourself first, he admitted. That conversation with Jake changed everything. Because it made me realize that some people in my family did see what was happening, they just didn't know how to change it. 2 days later, I received a call that would turn my small celebration into something none of us could have predicted. The call came from David Chin on a Tuesday afternoon, just 10 days before my celebration. Victoria, he said, his voice buzzing with excitement, something incredible has happened. Our marketing team shared your story internally, and it's resonated with everyone. We want to do something bigger. Bigger how? I asked, though I wasn't sure I was ready for the answer. We want to live stream your entire celebration across all our social media platforms. We're talking Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everything. We think your story about choosing your own family and celebrating authenticity could reach millions of people. Millions. The number made my head spin. What had started as a small gathering to reclaim my own narrative was about to become a global conversation. David, I need you to understand something, I said carefully. This isn't just about me anymore. My family is going to see this. There could be consequences. The best authentic content always has consequences, he replied. That's what makes it real. I spent that entire evening walking along the waterfront, trying to decide what to do. Part of me was terrified of the exposure, of the potential fallout with my family. But another part of me, the part that had been silenced for too long, was ready to speak my truth on the biggest stage possible. I said yes. The week leading up to my celebration was surreal. David's team arrived to set up professional lighting and cameras at the restaurant. Food bloggers and lifestyle influencers started sharing teasers about the event. The hashtag #ChosenFamilyCelebration began trending in Seattle social media circles. And then, 3 days before the event, Melissa called me. Victoria, she said, her voice shaking, what are you doing? I had been expecting this call, but hearing her voice still hit me like a punch to the gut. Despite everything, I loved my cousin. I had loved her long before I understood how different our places in the family hierarchy were. I'm celebrating the people who celebrate me, I said simply. On the weekend of my wedding? Her voice cracked. Everyone is going to be talking about your party instead of my wedding. Do you hate me that much? The accusation stung because it was so far from the truth. Melissa, I don't hate you. I've never hated you. But I can't keep pretending that it doesn't hurt to be erased from your life. Erased? Victoria, you're being dramatic. We just had to make difficult choices about the guest list. You invited my hairdresser, I said quietly. I saw it on her Instagram story. You invited my hairdresser, who you've met maybe twice, but you couldn't find room for me. The silence stretched between us, filled with years of unspoken resentment and missed opportunities for honest conversation. Finally, Melissa whispered, Mom said you wouldn't enjoy it anyway. That you'd find something to criticize. And you believed her? I don't know. Maybe I wanted to believe her because it made the decision easier. It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. Melissa, I hope your wedding is everything you dreamed of, I said, meaning it. I really do. But I'm done making myself smaller so other people can feel bigger. Friday evening arrived with the kind of perfect Pacific Northwest weather that makes you believe in magic. The sun was setting over Puget Sound, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold that no filter could improve. The restaurant was transformed with simple white flowers and string lights, creating an atmosphere that was both elegant and intimate. My chosen family began arriving at 6, Marcus and his husband James, Elena the officiant, 3 of my closest friends from college, my former professor Dr. Martinez, and a handful of vendors who had become dear friends over the years. 15 people total, small enough to feel personal, large enough to fill the space with love and laughter. As the cameras rolled and the live stream began, Elena gathered us in a circle on the restaurant's deck overlooking the water. We're here tonight, she said, her voice carrying across the water, to celebrate something radical and revolutionary, the choice to create family from love rather than obligation, to choose celebration over resentment, and to honor the truth that our worth isn't determined by other people's capacity to see it. I looked around the circle at the faces of people who had chosen to be there, not because they felt obligated, but because they genuinely wanted to celebrate me. For the first time in months, I felt complete. Marcus stepped forward with a speech that made me cry happy tears. Dr. Martinez shared stories about my passion and dedication as a student. My college friends reminded me of dreams I'd almost forgotten I had. One by one, they spoke about what I meant to them, creating a portrait of myself that was so different from the complicated person my family saw. But the moment that broke the internet came when Elena asked me to speak about what this celebration meant to me. Standing there with the sunset behind me and my chosen family surrounding me, I found words I didn't know I had. For my entire life, I believed that family meant accepting whatever scraps of love were offered, even when those scraps came with conditions. I believed that belonging meant changing myself to fit into spaces that were never designed for me. Tonight, I want to tell anyone who's watching that you are not too much, you are not too different, and you are not asking for too much when you ask to be celebrated for who you actually are. My voice grew stronger as I continued. This isn't about revenge or spite. This is about the revolutionary act of loving yourself enough to surround yourself with people who love you back unconditionally. This is about choosing joy over bitterness, celebration over resentment, and truth over keeping the peace. The comments on the live stream were pouring in faster than anyone could read them. People from around the world were sharing their own stories of family rejection and chosen family celebration. The hashtag chosen family celebration was trending nationally within an hour. But the comment that stopped my heart came from an unexpected source at JakeHayes_realtor had joined the livestream. I'm watching my sister shine brighter than I've ever seen her, he wrote. I should have been there. I should have stood up for her. But I'm standing up now. And then, even more shocking, it Sarah Hayes 2024 commented, Victoria, you are beautiful and brave and we love you. Jake and I are driving to Seattle right now. Save us some cake. 20 minutes later, my brother and sister-in-law walked through the restaurant doors, still in their work clothes but beaming with pride. The live stream audience went wild as I ran to hug them, tears streaming down my face. I'm sorry, Jake whispered in my ear. I'm sorry it took this for me to realize how badly we've all failed you. The celebration continued for another 2 hours, with impromptu speeches, dancing to Marcus's playlist, and more genuine laughter than I'd experienced in years. The professional videographer captured every moment, but the real magic was happening in the comments section, where thousands of people were sharing their own stories of choosing love over obligation. By the time the evening ended, the live stream had been viewed by over 800,000 people across all platforms. #ChosenFamilyCelebration had become a global movement, with people around the world planning their own celebrations of chosen family and authentic living. But the real victory wasn't the viral moment or the brand partnerships that would follow. The real victory was the text I received at midnight from my mom. I watched the live stream. "You were radiant. Can we talk tomorrow?" And then, at 12:47 a.m., one more message that changed everything. "This is Melissa. I saw what happened tonight. I'm sorry. I love you. Can I come see you tomorrow? We need to talk." As I finally fell asleep that night, surrounded by flowers from my celebration and messages of love from around the world, I realized that sometimes the best way to heal a family is to first heal yourself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve. And sometimes, when you stop waiting for other people to celebrate you and start celebrating yourself, the whole world joins the party. 3 months later, Melissa and I had lunch together for the first time in years. She told me about the pressure she'd felt to be perfect, about the anxiety of living up to everyone's expectations, about how seeing my celebration had made her realize she wanted the kind of authentic joy I'd found. "I want to plan my own celebration," she told me. "Not a wedding redo, but something that's actually about who I am, not who everyone wants me to be. Will you help me?" I smiled and pulled out my planning notebook. "Let's start with who you really want to invite this time. Have you ever experienced betrayal like this from your own family? Have you had to choose between keeping the peace and honoring your own worth? Share your story in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear that they're not alone in feeling like the family outsider." Sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to make yourself smaller for other people's comfort. 6 months after my viral celebration, I was standing in my childhood bedroom, packing up the last of my belongings. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if years of unspoken tension had finally been released into the open air. My celebration had changed everything, but not in the ways I'd expected. The global response had been overwhelming: brand partnerships, speaking opportunities, and even a book deal about redefining family relationships. But the real transformation had happened much closer to home. It started with that lunch with Melissa 3 months earlier. She had arrived at the cafe looking smaller than I remembered, her usual polished confidence replaced by something more vulnerable and real. "I keep thinking about what you said," she began, stirring her latte nervously. "About making yourself smaller for other people's comfort. I realized I've been doing that my entire life, just in a different way." "What do you mean?" She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I became who they wanted me to be so completely that I don't even know who I actually am anymore. The wedding, the career, the perfect house, it's all what was expected, not what I chose." Over the course of that 2-hour conversation, my cousin revealed things I'd never known. How she'd always felt the pressure to be the successful one in our generation. How she'd chosen her career path based on family approval rather than personal passion. How she'd even agreed to the country club wedding because it looked good in photos, not because it reflected what she and her husband actually wanted. "When Mom suggested we keep the wedding small by excluding you, I knew it was wrong," she admitted. "But I was so terrified of disappointing anyone that I went along with it. I convinced myself it was easier this way." "Easier for who?" "For everyone except you. And that's what I can't forgive myself for." That conversation led to another, then another. Slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of honesty instead of assumption. Melissa started therapy to work through years of people-pleasing and perfectionism. I started setting boundaries with family members who still couldn't understand why I'd made such a big deal about one wedding invitation. The real breakthrough came when Melissa asked me to help her plan what she called a marriage celebration, a small, intimate gathering to honor her relationship in a way that actually reflected who she and her husband were as a couple, not who the family wanted them to be. "I want to do it right this time," she said. "I want to celebrate love, not image. And I want you there, not as the photographer, but as my family." That celebration, held in their backyard with fairy lights and homemade food, became the template for how our families started approaching gatherings. Smaller, more intentional, focused on connection rather than impression. Jake and Sarah were the next to embrace this new approach. They planned a vow renewal ceremony for their 5th anniversary, not because their marriage was struggling, but because they wanted to honor their growth together. Sarah had been deeply affected by my story and realized she'd been performing the role of perfect daughter-in-law rather than just being herself. "Your celebration showed me that authenticity is more beautiful than perfection," she told me as we planned the ceremony. "I want our kids to grow up knowing they're loved for who they are, not who they achieve to be." But the most significant change came from my parents. 2 weeks after my viral moment, they asked to meet me for dinner, just the three of us, no agenda, no family politics. My dad, who had always struggled with emotional conversations, looked across the table at me with tears in his eyes. "Victoria, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "Watching you celebrate yourself the way you did, seeing how happy you looked surrounded by people who truly see you, it made me realize that I've never told you how proud I am of who you've become." "Dad." "No, let me finish. I've spent so many years worried about what success looks like, what other people think, what fits the family image, that I forgot to celebrate the incredible person you are. You're talented, compassionate, brave in ways I never was. And instead of supporting that, I made you feel like you had to apologize for being different." My mom reached across the table and took my hand. "We've been talking to a counselor," she said quietly. "About family dynamics, about favoritism we didn't even realize we were showing. We want to do better, but we need you to help us understand how." That dinner was the beginning of the hardest and most rewarding conversations our family had ever had. We talked about the ways perfectionism had poisoned our relationships, about how the pursuit of image had cost us intimacy. We discussed the subtle favoritism that had shaped our family dynamics, the way business success had become the primary measure of worth. My parents started therapy, both individually and together. They began having honest conversations with Jake about the pressure they'd put on him to be the family successor, and with Melissa about the impossible standards they'd set for her behavior. They even confronted Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert about their role in excluding me, leading to a family meeting that was long overdue. The confrontation with Aunt Linda was particularly intense. She initially tried to defend her decision, claiming she was protecting Melissa's special day and that I had always been sensitive about these things. But when faced with the united friend of my parents, Jake, and eventually Melissa herself, she broke down. "I was jealous," she finally admitted, sobbing in my parents' living room. "I was jealous of how creative and free Victoria was, how she followed her dreams without caring what anyone thought. I wanted Melissa to be safe, to choose the path that would guarantee acceptance. And I resented Victoria for showing us there was another way to live." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to any of us. Now, 6 months later, as I packed up my childhood memorabilia to move them to my new apartment, a bigger place I could afford thanks to the opportunities that came from my viral moment, I reflected on how profoundly everything had changed. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, "Ready for tonight's celebration planning meeting? Melissa's bringing wine and Sarah's making those cookies you love." Tonight, we were planning something unprecedented in Hayes family history, a joint birthday celebration for my dad and Uncle Robert, organized entirely by the family women, focused on gratitude and connection rather than networking and business talk. The guest list included neighbors, old friends, and even some of my chosen family members who had become beloved fixtures at our gatherings. As I folded the last of my childhood photos into a memory box, I found a picture from a family vacation when Melissa and I were teenagers. We were sitting on a dock at the lake house, both of us laughing at something off camera, our arms around each other's shoulders. I had forgotten how close we used to be before family politics and unspoken expectations created distance between us. I tucked the photo into my purse and headed downstairs, where my parents were waiting to help me load the moving truck. "You know," my mom said, wrapping me in a hug, "I keep thinking about what you said during your celebration. About choosing joy over resentment. I want you to know that watching you choose joy, even after everything we put you through, taught me more about grace than any sermon ever could." As we drove to my new apartment, a space that would finally have room for a proper photography studio, I realized that this story didn't end with revenge or vindication. It ended with something much more radical: forgiveness, growth, and the slow, careful work of rebuilding relationships on a foundation of truth. My celebration had gone viral not because it was perfectly planned or beautifully photographed, but because it represented something millions of people longed for: permission to be authentic, the courage to demand better treatment, and the wisdom to know that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for a family is refuse to enable their dysfunction. 6 months later, our family was still imperfect, still learning, still navigating the complicated dance of loving each other while honoring our individual truths. But we were doing it together, with eyes wide open and hearts finally willing to change. And that, I realized as I hung my photography prints in my new studio, was the most beautiful celebration of all. Have you ever experienced betrayal like this from your own family? Have you had to choose between keeping the peace and honoring your own worth? Share your story in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear that they're not alone in feeling like the family outsider. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to make yourself smaller for other people's comfort.